homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Anybody else dealing with the last hurrah of tomatoes in September? We actually picked these a week ago, more than a week ago now, and they've been sitting out on my back porch, and so I've definitely got some bad spots in here that I'm going to need to cut away. And I just threw a bunch to the chickens. I've also increased my population of fruit flies quite a bit by letting those sit out there, unfortunately. I am making the recipe that I make when I am buried in tomatoes and I don't have time to can them, which is a roasted tomato sauce that I'm just going to freeze in freezer bags. It is absolutely delicious. And the beauty of this is that you can add tons of olive oil and garlic and onions and other things to it without worrying about the safety of it, because you're not going to be canning it. And because we're going to roast it, these skins are just going to come right off once these tomatoes are roasted. And honestly, we don't even have to take the skins off. We can just leave them on and put the whole thing in the food processor and blitz it up and then throw it in the freezer. And it will be utterly delicious in the middle of winter when we're wanting some fresh pasta sauce for, just pasta, but also for making lasagna or anything else that requires a red sauce. So this is a really great thing to have on hand. I have quite a bit of it already, which is why I haven't made it until this late in the season, because I still have quite a few from previous years, but I've also used a few this year, and so I thought I would make some more. I'm making this recipe out of a mix of different kinds of tomatoes. If you are fairly new to gardening, there seems to be this kind of unexpected assumption by a lot of new gardeners that if you're canning tomatoes, they have to be red, or they have to be paste style or Roma style tomatoes, or if you're preserving tomatoes, period, that they have to be that. And these are not. These are obviously heirlooms. They're going to be extra juicy. It's one of the reasons we're going to roast them, because it's going to decrease how much liquid is in this recipe without having to cook it down in a pot to reduce it, which is nice. But you can can any tomato. There's some myths out there about pH and that different colors of tomatoes have different pH. There's no real truth to that. The reality is they vary by growing conditions and other things, but that the actual color is not really going to make a dramatic difference, at least not universally. And so you can can and process and make paste or whatever out of any color tomato you want. Sometimes it looks a little weird. I often do salsa with mixed colors like this. And so we end up with a salsa that has a lot of yellow in it. But there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not going to worry about the Romas being flat on the tray. I'm just going to kind of toss them about and let them do their own thing. And I don't really need to core these. The cores on these are really small. But if they have like this where it's split, I am going to cut that part out. These are the San Marzano 2 from Johnny's, and they're getting a lot smaller as the season goes on. They were pretty good size to start with. The other variety that I grow is Ridorta, and Ridorta is much, much larger than this variety. And I finally got around to doing a side-by-side taste test of the Ridorta and the San Marzano 2 from Johnny's, and I don't like this one nearly as well. It's not nearly as sweet. The Ridorta has a really lovely sweet flavor to it. So I'm going to go back to Ridorta. I was not able to find seeds for that this spring, and which is why I ended up trying this other variety. How did you guys do this year in terms of tomatoes? Was it a good tomato year? We had a really good tomato year locally. It's been an excellent, excellent year for tomatoes. I'm glad I'm not in Texas right now. I feel for you if you are in Texas. You guys had a really hard season. All right, so we've got 2 trays of tomatoes here, and I don't have any real measurements for this. I just eyeball it, but what I'm gonna do here is sprinkle a bunch of kosher salt Salt and tomatoes are best friends. Because I've got these skin side up, there's not going to be nearly as much sticking, but there's going to be a lot of juice, and I'm going to drain the juice into the sauce. And I'm going to mix these two batches together too. This is olive oil. You don't have to use super good quality olive oil, just a good all-purpose everyday olive oil for roasting and, you know, cooking. It doesn't have to be super duper fancy. But go pretty heavy here. This is flavor. It's gonna be delicious. I'm about out of this jar. And then I like to throw in some garlic. And I'm not gonna peel this, I'll peel it once it's roasted because this is gonna keep it from burning. I'm just gonna tuck that down in. And you can go with as much garlic or as little garlic as you want. Sometimes when I have more room on the pans, I will also add onion to this. I'm not going to today because I just have way too many tomatoes and there's no room. And then this is going into a 425-degree oven. I'm gonna cook this for about a half an hour. Be aware that if you put too many tomatoes in here, they're gonna release a lot of juice and this will get full and overflow. Ask me how I know. So you don't wanna overdo it. That's probably a little thick. We'll see how we do. And you can, I've seen, there's many recipes out here for this. Sometimes the temperature is at 375, sometimes it's at 400, sometimes it's at 425. It's just gonna change how long you cook them for. And so do what makes you comfortable or what you've got time for. I'm gonna set this for 45 minutes and we'll see how we do. All right, you guys, I can smell that this is boiled over a little bit because my oven smells like roasted tomatoes, but whew, a little steamy. But for the most part, I think we've done okay. This is the really tricky part. Because there's a lot of juice in there. These should be not quite as juicy because they're a paste tomato, so they're a little bit drier. Yeah, okay. We didn't do too bad. I'm gonna let these fully cool. I probably won't peel all of these. I'll peel the obvious ones, and the rest of them I'm just gonna leave the skins on when I blend them up. And then these guys I will peel because they're gonna be really easy to peel. So meet me back here in a few when everything has cooled down. All right, our tomatoes have cooled, and I'm just gonna slip off skins. And I am not concerned with getting every single skin piece off. If some of this gets whipped into the finished sauce in the food processor, that's totally fine. You notice I did not seed these. That's also fine. This is meant to be a quick roasting and a quick way of getting my garden harvest into my freezer without a lot of fuss. Beautiful, huge chunk of garlic, and you can see how soft that is. So that's just gonna go into the mix. These smell really good. And part of what roasting does is it's caramelizing some of the natural sugars in these tomatoes, and it's also evaporating a lot of the moisture that's in them. So we're gonna get a fairly thick sauce without a lot of fuss. This particular variety of Roma tomato really doesn't peel easily, which is super frustrating. Although these are going pretty good. These are better than the last batch I did. And so I'm just gonna do a few that I see here with some caramelization on them. All right, I have cleaned these as much as I'm going to. I'm just gonna move them into the food processor. And I'm not gonna worry too much about the liquid here. I will just add that after they're mixed.
So once this is blended, you're going to want to taste it for seasoning. I decided this needed a little bit more salt. Sometimes you might want to add just a pinch of sugar, depending on how sweet your tomatoes are. And then once it's all where you want it, I freeze it into freezer storage bags, and I typically either do a 1 pound or a 2 pound bag. 1 pound is enough for us to have a couple of spaghetti dinners, and 2 pounds is good for things like a batch of lasagna or something where I need quite a bit of red sauce. And then definitely freeze these flat when you freeze them initially. It makes stacking them later much, much easier. And that's really all there is to it. Once they're frozen solid in about 24 hours, you can stash them in your freezer for later use. I hope you guys try this recipe. It really is delicious, and it's definitely become a staple on our homestead. Thanks for watching, Tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.